When it comes to talent in esports, there are many things that come to mind. This might be expert decision making, perfect in-game leader communication, or something else entirely, but undoubtedly the most revered skill, especially in the FPS world, is the simple ability to hit freaking heads.
Not in terms of the money, Twist fighting it. Oh my god!
We made it! We made it! We made it!
In this video, we're going to go over the fundamental aspects of aim and what makes it such a hard skill to master. We're going to differentiate aim types, aim styles, and how movement ties into aim so that you can start to hit your shots more and more consistently. But before we begin, definitely check out the Saudi Esports Academy down below. We have courses with top pro players and have helped many make the jump from amateur to professional play. Now, before we cover the advanced stuff, we need to strip everything back into baby terms so that you can build a proper foundation. Now, in order to develop good aim, it all starts with your physical body. And you're probably staring at your screen wondering where I'm going with this, but in short, these three things, your arms, hands, and fingers, are the main tools that you have as a gamer if you want to aim like top tier players like Shroud and Tens. So what are the main differences between these three things and how do they impact your gameplay, most importantly, your aim? Well, the most important thing to remember is that the bigger the scale of the body part, the bigger the movement. If you were to swipe your entire arm across your mouse pad, more likely than not, your character is going to turn around in game. Similar, if you move your hand or your wrist completely from one side of its range of motion to the other side of its range of motion, it is likely that your crosshair would have moved enough to swap targets. What about your fingertips then? Well, these handy little tools are perfect for what we call micro adjustments. Micro adjustments, put simply, are the tiny changes that we can make to the position of our crosshair that is the difference between a missed shot and a hit shot. The best analogy I have is an artist and their paintbrush. If they're trying to do the finite details on the face, they're going to use a tiny little brush. And if they want to make large sweeping strokes to color in parts of the canvas, they're going to use a giant paintbrush. Using a giant paintbrush on the little details would cause them to be completely inaccurate and look terrible, and using a tiny paintbrush on the large canvas would take forever. These tools need to be used for appropriate situations. There are specific aim training routines that you can do to practice different types of aim. Whether it's Kovacs or aim labs, there are different practices for arm aim, wrist aim, and even finger aim. In a future video, we'll break this down more in depth. Smash that subscribe so you don't miss out. Now, next up, let's talk about grip types, because different grip types are going to be more appropriate for you depending on what you want to accomplish and how you naturally feel using these various grip types. Palm grip involves the player's hand being laid completely flat over the mouse. The main points of contact are the fingertips, fingers, and of course the palm. Because of the contact being spread across almost the entire hand, you're able to easily be in control of your mouse during the large arm movements like turning. This aim style is very comfortable and very popular, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best for you, but it definitely does mean you should test it out and see if you like it. Next up is claw grip, which is very similar to palm, where your fingertips make contact with the mouse, as well as the palm being planted and anchored on the edge of the mouse. The main difference comes from the fact that with this grip, the length of the fingers themselves don't touch the mouse. This gives the player more access to their wrist, as well as huge access to their fingers, giving them enough control for finger movements or micro adjustment flicks. Finally, there's the fingertip grip. This is when a player's only form of contact with the mouse is through their fingertips, not even their palm is resting to anchor the mouse. This gives a player extreme fluid motion, speed, as well as the option to look up and down efficiently, but it's definitely the hardest to control the mouse with consistently. This is most likely because a player has to use their arm, wrist, and fingers to compensate for the lack of contact they're making with the mouse, but also because it's a grip that can feel very tense and fatiguing while trying to learn it. Now that you heard what each of these grips are good for, what are the best to learn? The answer, whatever makes you most comfortable. Comfortability is the most overlooked things when it comes to aiming or playing games in general. There's a reason why some of even the best gamers in the world have a variation when it comes to sensitivity, grips, and even postures. In fact, it's important to note that a large number of pro gamers swap between grips or have a hybrid of the three. Here at the Saudi Esports Academy, we suggest trying every one of these for a substantial amount of time and ultimately coming to the one that you like the best and trying to get good and competent at it. Now, the idea of comfortability goes even deeper than grips. Posture is one of the most underrated things that you need to be thinking about, and for those of you who don't know, posture is just another way to say seated position. Not only can this impact your comfortability, but it can also impact more practical elements of your game, like range of motion, which of course could negatively impact your overall aim. Now, when building your setup, you definitely should be thinking about your desk space. Imagine you're playing a game and when you're popping off, you're doing really well, and it's coming to the end of the fight and you need to clutch up, when suddenly you smack your hand off the back of your keyboard, your monitor, or even send your mouse flying off the desk as a whole. You're going to need a lot of space for your mouse pad depending on your sensitivity, and you want to make sure that your desk is not too obtrusive with your legs, your posture, or your overall setup of your keyboard and mouse. Now, speaking of mouse, when you're picking a mouse, you want to look at ergonomics, so size and weight, but you also want to consider the quality of the mouse's sensors and DPI. And generally, when you're playing an FPS, you want a mouse that is designed for FPS play. Not overly heavy, and without many of the buttons that are commonly seen on mouses that are meant for MOBAs or MMOs. Your mouse is almost purely for aiming, and you don't want to have extra tension by pressing 5 buttons simultaneously to aiming on the same mouse. So you want a mouse that is designed for FPSs in general. Now, in order to help you become a prolific aimer, let's listen to some advice from one of the best aimers in the entire world, Tens.
Advice on how to improve my aim. I think aim is something you don't just like improve overnight. It's something that you just train. It's kind of like learning an instrument, right? This is the same way I like view it. When you learn an instrument, you play it enough, you get better at the instrument, it kind of becomes second nature to you. I don't even want to know how many hours I have in gaming in general, and I don't even want to know how many hours I've spent in my life with my hand on a mouse. But it's all just like playing, getting better naturally. Like you will always improve to some degree when you're like playing constantly.
Now, Tens relates learning how to aim like learning an instrument, as in you need to play it a substantial amount of time to develop that second nature. But how do we develop that second nature? And more specifically, what does Tens do to develop his second nature in aiming? Yes, he says to play consistently, but let's look a little deeper. Here are 3 things that Tens does that we can emulate to develop amazing aim just like him. The first up is a consistent warm-up. Every single play session, Tens has almost an identical warm-up. For him, it's aim trainers practicing about 10 minutes, making sure that he feels good with his mouse control. Then he's going to spend 20 minutes in the training range, practicing with every single weapon, getting accustomed to the differences between them, and warming up overall. Finally, he's going to wrap it up with a deathmatch or team deathmatch that's going to allow him to take the things he practiced and bring it into a more ranked-like environment. Now, the important thing to note here is that Tens is already known as one of the best aimers in the entire world, yet he does these things every single day. You see, Tens didn't get good overnight. He's played tons of hours grinding shooter games, and he akins getting better at aiming as a culmination of all the effort you spent and the consistency of training that you do. So basically, creating a routine and investing time into it every single day, if you compare one day of training to the next day, you might not see a substantial change. But the combined effort of multiple days, weeks, even months together can turn you from a regular aimer into someone that is aiming and playing a lot closer to someone like Tens. The next thing that we can learn from Tens is self-experimentation and trial and error. Something that Tens is notorious for is being a player who cannot commit to one type of sense or one type of mouse. In fact, he goes through a giant amount of equipment and a ton of settings changes all the time. And this might seem from the outside looking in like it's a bad thing, like it's something you should never do. You should try to find things that are consistent and stick with it. But this is one of the ways that Tens differentiates himself from many of the other people that are trying to become good aimers. Tens really learns what he personally likes, and he only does this through experimentation. You see, there is no perfect sensitivity, there is no perfect equipment, there is no perfect anything from one player to the next. Part of becoming a great aimer is discovering yourself, figuring out what you actually prefer, what type of training, settings, equipment, and things that fit you the best. And the only way to do that is through experimentation. If you settle with one and stick with it, you'll never know exactly if it's the perfect fit for you. And that's why someone that is constantly trying different things and experimenting with their own aim styles, changing their grips, changing their settings, changing everything, is going to be the person that finds higher peaks and ways to improve when other people stagnate. And it's one of the many reasons why Tens has differentiated himself from the masses and become a much better aimer, even at the highest levels of play. And it's actually ironic because a lot of people will see Tenz's settings and equipment and they will just get what he gets. They will copy what he has. But if they were trying to actually emulate Tenz, they wouldn't do that at all. They would be striving to find their own optimal setup in a very similar way that Tenz does. Well, he will constantly experiment with what he likes, never fully settling on any one thing and making it so that he's always willing to further evolve. Now, the last targeted thing that we can learn from Tenz is from this notable clip.
Tips for smoother aim or any exercise you do for smoother aim? Just like, don't rely on flicking. Like literally just like move your crosshair slow. You don't have to like immediately like flick like this. I mean, I know I do that, but it's more of just like a habit.
Now, Tenz is known for being one of the fastest flickers in the game. So why is he telling you when you're trying to develop to actually slow things down? From the outside looking in, it makes it seem like he is not living up to what he says, but you gotta understand that this is advice for someone that is trying to get good aim, not someone like Tenz who already has good aim. And this is the important takeaway that you need to take from what Tenz says. You need to learn how to do things correctly first before you do things fast. Do things slow and correct, then you can speed it up, because if you go too fast too early, you're going to do things fast and poorly, or it's going to be fast and incorrect. Now, the thing is, we intrinsically know this through our daily life. When we're doing something brand new, especially if it's a bit dangerous, we slow down. Whether we're learning how to drive or whether we're trying to bake a cake, our first times and the times that we are not confident in our process, we slow it down and make sure we do everything correct. But as we get more competent and more confident, we speed up the process until maybe we're not even thinking about it at all, and it becomes part of our second nature. And that is where it comes full circle. This is how you develop the second nature. You start things slow and you increase as you get better, but you make sure that you're slow and correct. And then as you do that better and better and better, you can increase the speed, build that second nature, and become someone that has phenomenal aim, just like Tenz and many other top pros that are dominating around the world, including the many pros here in Saudi Arabia that can help you level up with the Saudi Esports Academy, where we run boot camps held by top tier pros. So if you really want to level up your gameplay and get taught by one of the best players in the world, definitely check out the Saudi Esports Academy website in the links down below. Smash that like and subscribe, and thank you so much for coming by. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.